So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'm Ann Ye, Impact 100 Jersey Coast Grants co-chair. I know time is your greatest currency, so thank you for spending some of that with us today. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces. Thank you for your interest in our grant opportunity, and I'm also so excited to see so many new faces. We hope today's session will set you up for success should you decide to apply. A replay of today's session will be on our website. And we also have a ton of other information on our website. We have frequently asked questions. It's also where you will go to find the link to our eligibility form, which is our first step in our application process. So please take a look at it, impact100jerseycoast.org. Welcome. I'd like to introduce some of our members of Impact 100 Jersey Coast you'll be hearing from today because we are an all-volunteer organization. Like I mentioned, first is our co-president, Rowena Crawford Phillips, if she can just say hi.
Hello, welcome everybody. Nice to see you all.
Next, we have Betsy McKnight.
Hello, how is everyone?
Good, thanks.
She is our nonprofit coordinator co-chair, and her other half is Elizabeth Williams.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you today.
And then I want to give a really warm welcome to our 2022 grantee from the Society for Prevention of Teen Suicide, Dawn Doherty. She will be here to answer some questions. She was sitting in your seat a year ago, and we hope her perspective as an applicant last year provides you with some insight to our process going forward this year. Really quickly, our email address is down there in the right-hand corner, grants@impact100jc.org. Through this entire process, I promise we have 5 or 6 eyes on that inbox. So please send us your questions. We want to be helpful in your completion of application. So technical questions, maybe a question on a response. We are around and we're here to help you out. Just a quick reminder on who we are. We are a women's giving circle, and our model is one woman, one vote. And with so many ladies participating, your organization exposure extends beyond just this application process. We've found incredible value in having our members of nonprofits in our community join our giving circle. Sometimes they're on a grant review committee. They volunteer in other capacities, such as our diversity, equity, and inclusion team, our own grants team, our marketing team. But just be aware, we will never ask them to serve on a committee where they could have influence over their own organization's success. We have no lobbying within our organization or preference for any of our applicants during our grant review process. And it's only once when they become a grantee that we begin an ongoing relationship. We welcome and encourage your feedback. We send out surveys every step of the way. We make phone calls to organizations that have participated. So please know we evolve based on your feedback. Unfortunately, as an all-volunteer organization, though, we can't give specific feedback to organizations that are engaged in our application. So we do have a document that we send with general suggestions. But we just want to know there's so many variables involved in our review process. The pool of applicants changes, the members of our member makeup changes, and even the environment we live in. So unfortunately, specific feedback to each of the organizations is difficult for us to do. Hot off the presses, we just closed our membership on Friday. And I'm so happy to announce that our grant fund this year is $403,000. So we will be giving 4 Impact 100 grants of $100,000 each at our annual meeting. Actually, we know the date. It is Tuesday, November 28th. So that will be the date of our annual meeting. Here are photos from last year of our grant recipients, as well as our mission award recipients. We will continue offering mission awards to all of our finalists that do not receive an Impact 100 grant, but those amounts will be announced when the finalists are confirmed closer to the annual meeting. One additional change I spoke to in an informational video that went out last month is our move away from reviewing grants by focus area. And instead of randomly reviewing grants across those focus areas, the same number of members will review all proposals, and those member-led committees will put forth the strongest proposals from their pool of applications. So one question I just want to answer, and I think it's very, very great. They asked, being aware that there are many critical social services needs to be prioritized, there is yet to be sufficient funds awarded in a grant in all of the Impact 100 Jersey Coast categories. So last year we had those 5 focus areas. Quick note, we're still asking you to select those focus areas in our eligibility. You can actually choose more than one. You're going to choose the one that your proposal fits best with. But we know that there's a lot of these proposals touch so many different areas of our community. So select more than one, but we're not asking that question this year to, as to why you selected that focus area. So we're trying to reduce the application questions, but we're also trying to make it easier for all of the categories to submit the application. So the question continued on, what is the likelihood of an environment application being awarded for a grant? And, I think it's more likely now in our new process because one, we've removed that muddy question that could have multiple focus areas. Oh, sorry.
Muddy notes. Okay, I need that table or that.
Sorry, ladies, 1 second. Thank you so much. But since we've removed that question, members' focus will be on the strength of the proposal, not where it fits within the categories. And we hope that you find our application less daunting. Let me go to our next slide. Here are some very important dates for 2023. We will have this on our website.
Call me later.
So please feel free to go to our website to get these dates. One of the things I want to highlight, again, we're trying to be more resourceful with our applicants, is we're hosting office hours. Those dates that are highlighted in pink there on April 25th and May 24th for 2 hours, we will be having in-person office hours. Those will be located at NJCU at Fort Monmouth in Oceanport. We'll have a conference room there. That April 25th date, those hours will be from 10 to 12. Members of our grants team will be there. And then on May 24th, again, it will be from 3 to 5. We will answer any questions, any technical questions that you have, either if it's filling out our budget and attaching it to your application. If you want to think through maybe your response to one of our questions, we're there for you to listen. We'll give you some, obviously we'll try to help you answer the question to the best we think, not that we think, but what we think our members want to hear. And sometimes just being a sounding board, we hope that's being seen as resourceful to you.
Hey, Mike.
The remaining dates will be Zoom.
The other pill you have to take is on the table.
Hold on 1 second. Can I have everyone just make sure they're muted? Thank you. So, in the meantime, please register off of our website to attend those information sessions. We'll send Zoom links out for those remaining dates, and we hope to see you in person as well. Any other questions? Like I said, email us grants@impact100jc.com, and we will respond very quickly this year. So at this time, I want to hand over the presentation to our own Elizabeth Williams, one of our nonprofit coordinators. As I introduced before, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I'm off mute now. So good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Williams, and I'm one of the nonprofit coordinator co-chairs along with Betsy McKnight. It's my pleasure to be here today to review the information surrounding eligibility and application information for projects and for organizations. And as Ann mentioned earlier, time is a very valuable resource to everyone, and we recognize the time and resources that go into participation in our grant cycle. So the first step in our process is to determine if the submitting organization meets the eligibility elements for participation. So for all of you who are repeating applicants, these guidelines haven't changed. All of these criteria reflect the mission and funding priorities of Impact 100 Jersey Coast, which are to support local organizations serving local residents in Monmouth County, and to meet our responsibilities to our membership by ensuring that organizations who participate in our process are financially secure and stable and have the infrastructure and resources to manage a grant of this size. So let's begin by reviewing the organizational eligibility criteria. Organizations will be tax exempt under the 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. And we've received questions in the past on municipalities or libraries. If they have a 501c3 status, they are eligible. And if they're not a 501c3, they may need to apply through another established foundation. As for religious organizations, those that have a 501c3 status no longer require an additional or separate status. Proposals from a religious institution will require us to receive evidence that belonging to or participating in that religion is not required for participants to receive service or benefits of the proposed project. And the evidence could be a simple letter that's then attached to your application and added as a document. Organizations need to have been operating as a registered 501c3 for at least 36 months prior to applying. And this is evidenced by your letter of determination from the IRS. The organization will possess 2 years of complete financial statements, and Liz will go over financial requirements in more detailed matter a little bit later. They must have an annual operating budget of $100,000. So it's worth noting that other impact groups, which have a higher minimum budget requirement, some as high as 3 to 5 million, but our requirements are lower to ensure that the grant process is accessible to as many Monmouth County nonprofits that are possible, while also providing our members with the reassurance that the potential grantee recipients are already experienced in handling a 6-figure budget. We just want to be sure that you understand that a minimum operating budget includes $100,000 in gross revenue, as well as a minimum of $100,000 in operating expenses for each fiscal year. We have had some feedback for some organizations that the minimum budget really isn't a reality, especially some of those smaller startups in the community and those that are volunteer-based. Organizations may want to consider submitting an application as a collaboration, which we'll be able to discuss in a few minutes. Now let's look at what we fund. These are the requirements for the proposed project or program. The project needs to serve and benefit Monmouth County. Again, the aim of the impact grant is to support local organizations serving local residents. Having said that, organizational headquarters can be located outside of Monmouth County, but the proposed project must be located in and must benefit Monmouth County residents to be eligible for participation. So just so you're aware, there happen to be 3 impact groups serving New Jersey: Impact Garden State, Impact 100 Essex, and Impact 100 South Jersey, all serving different communities. And so it is a question that we've had before. If an organization applies for Impact 100 Garden State funding, can we still apply for Impact 100 Jersey Coast if it's a different project in a different area? And the answer is yes. As long as your project serves Monmouth County population, we would welcome your application. The next point, we will fund new projects, expansion or strength of existing programs, and also collaborations. Remember, our focus remains on transformational projects. We ask within the application that you clearly define the measurable impact that the grant would have for your organization and those that you serve within your application. The explanation is very important Since you know your project and its impact better than anyone else, you'll want to ensure that your team provides everyone in our grant review committee with the information to understand your project and all of the important elements that make it very special to this process. The project does need to have a budget that's equal or greater than the grant amount, which this year is $100,000. We did receive a question on this, and at this time, for this grant cycle, we only fund $100,000 grants, but we are always looking for ways to evolve. So we will take the idea of smaller grant requests for smaller organizations, perhaps those that are just starting out, back to our leadership. Our focus remains funding of transformational projects and programs, and your organization will have the chance to clearly articulate why you think your project is transformative within the application itself. Your organization will need to fully spend the grant funds within 24 months. However, we do encourage requests to fund ongoing programs as well. So it's great to know that we're jumpstarting or investing in a program that has a strong probability of being funded beyond our 1 or 2 year involvement. Applications are considered stronger when they clearly explain how a program's legacy is defined. Can it be sustained after the grant has been spent? And, or if the project is not sustained after the grant has been spent, how can the impact of the program be felt after the project is over? Let's take a look at the next slide. So we recently received this question. If awarded, can the grant be spent in 1 year? And the answer is yes. It can be spent in only 1 year. However, when you sign the agreement with us, we do break up the payments. So you would work with us on what would make sense for your project. We have some that spend the grant in 6 months as well, but 24 months is the longest period of time that we have for spending the grant. And we do fund operating expenses as long as you show that they are necessary for implementation and success of the proposal or project. We do not put a restriction on the amount of the operating expense in relation to the grant amount like many other organizations do. And we mentioned before in the eligibility of the organization about religious institutions, but we do need evidence that no requirement to belong or participate in that religion is required for participants to receive the benefit, and the organization must be a separate 501c3. Contingencies. This comes up when there are projects which might require something like a building permit or some completion at a future date from the time you make application. We do expect the contingencies would be resolved by September 15th, and all other critical elements of your application be resolved by September 15th. Our members just are unable to deal with the unknowns beyond that period of time. And as Ann mentioned, our annual meeting is in the end of November. So the rest of the process has to take place within that period of time. So we can't accept any contingencies after September 15th. We have previously received a few questions relating to funding equipment needs, or lunches that can go towards food or toiletries or cleaning supplies. And the answer is yes, yes, yes. If you do need those items for your project to be successful, then absolutely, our funds can go towards them. You just need to list those things in your project budget and in the financial narrative, and then explain why those items are needed to make your project a success. Next slide, please. Oops, let's go to, there we go. So if you find that your organization's having trouble meeting your eligibility criteria, you may be able to still apply for our grant through a collaboration with another organization that does meet our requirements. So in a collaboration, the participants share the grant funding. The lead organization will submit one application for the collaboration proposal. That lead organization details in their application budget with the amount that will be passed through to the non-lead. The collaborating non-lead partner only needs to provide a letter of commitment confirming how much of the grant they will receive and how they will use it, and include that letter in the LEADS application submission. Many organizations have considered working in collaboration, and one of our prior grant recipients had a collaboration effort just last year. So in addition, we've also created a collaboration video, and that will be posted at some point in the future on our website, and it will provide additional information about this topic. Next slide, please. So these are the projects and programs that Impact won't provide funding for. All of these are standard, and we can take any questions at the end of the discussion if these are unclear. Just a couple of important points to highlight. Operating expenses and overhead. Our grant review committee definitely recognizes that overhead costs and expenses are required for the successful management and delivery of a project. These type of expenses will be accepted as long as they are reasonable and identified as being an integral part of and necessary for the program or project. In terms of programming expenses, we understand that being properly staffed is critical to implementing any project. If staff expenses are a large part of the project budget, please explain within your app how the staff will be funded going forward after the grant period, or if the staff salary is only required to start the project, make that clear also. Remember that if salaries are involved in your calculation, to have a complete submission, include those additional items that might be applicable to the type of position that you're suggesting. For example, payroll taxes or benefits for employees, other expenses related to personnel employment that are requirements. If these expenses do not apply to the project personnel, make mention in the project why they're not applicable, and in the financial narrative in the budget section within the application. Just to be clear on capital improvements, at the point at the bottom of this slide, we do fund capital projects. And in fact, Shore House was awarded a grant last year for renovation of their kitchen and clubhouse space. What our committees look for is the impact that will be generated by the capital improvement. One note on capital projects, you need to own the property or have a lease within at least 5 years remaining from the date of the grant agreement for the project to be eligible. Next slide, please. So as we talked about earlier, the grant cycle process begins with accessing the eligibility form via our eligibility page to ensure that your organization and project are eligible for the grant. Click on how to apply, which will take you to the eligibility form landing page. After completing the eligibility application, you'll submit and you'll receive a confirmation email that it's been received. If you do not receive an email that your eligibility form was received, please contact us at grants@impact100jc.org to notify us that this occurred. We want to be sure that your information is considered just as soon as possible after it's submitted. And in the event there was some software glitch, we'll make sure by your email to go back and confirm that we get your information in time. Once the eligibility application is reviewed, you'll receive the email that the organization and project is either not eligible for participation or that it's eligible. And this later response will also include a link to the grant application. Next slide, please. So our application is similar to last year, but every year we make adjustments in response to feedback that we receive through our nonprofit surveys. Today, we are again looking for proposals that clearly articulate with evidence how the project or program align with our funding priorities. Evidence can be things like references, third-party articles, data, prior data that your organization has. Any evidence that you can provide in the application is very helpful. So in terms of our funding priorities, who is the underserved population? Explain clearly who this population is, where they're located, in what way are they underserved, and how and why are they currently underserved. For example, Perhaps a government funding doesn't include them in their policy. Or maybe there's an urgent, unrecognized, on-the-ground insight that you can highlight for our members about this population. Next, let's look at the next question. What are their unmet needs and how will your project specifically address them? Clearly demonstrate the ways in which your project targets a clear and important need that isn't and won't be met without the project. Why or how is your project best placed to address those needs alongside or in partnership with other service providers? What is the current service delivery gap that isn't or won't be filled without your project or program? When thinking about this project, it may be helpful to consider what would happen without it. What is it that is so absolutely necessary that you do or your project will accomplish at this time in your community? And lastly, describe the impact on beneficiaries. Your project may impact increasingly greater numbers of people. For example, enabling you to reach 50 more people or 50 more schools. Your project may also impact a very small number of individuals, but in a very big way. For example, providing housing and wraparound services for 5 individuals, which is truly life-changing for each individual. Use both outputs and outcomes to tell your story and make your application stand out. Next slide, please. Just remember the strength and impact of the proposal are universally valued when you're developing your presentation. This does not imply that professional writing is the answer to success. The focus of your organization, regardless of your size and resources, is on the strength of the idea and how it will impact the community. It is a great equalizer. Let's move on now to the eligibility process. So I'm sorry, I said eligibility process. I'm talking about the application process now. I apologize. So this is a sneak peek into the key questions about our project application, and it's summarized in these 8 questions. Every year, we continue to revise the application to reduce the questions that are specific to impact, but are more focused about your organization and the proposal. Just take a minute to read through some of these. So we've reduced the overall questions in the application based on the feedback from the nonprofits, as well as the review committee members. Please know a large portion of our application is submitting your organization's profile and financial information similar to other grants that you would apply for. We wanted to try to give you an insight into what our members look for on each question. If you have an opportunity while you're sitting here, try to imagine what you would include in your finalist presentation at the annual meeting and work back from those key points to illustrate the transformational impact of the project. Be specific about how the funds will be used and how project goals will be achieved with those funds. Revisit this at the end before you submit. Let's look back on question 3 of the prior slide, which asked, how will you track and measure the impact of your proposal? This is the famous outcomes and outputs of proposals, which sometimes the words can be a bit challenging, but the reason for them is very important. Most of you are familiar with these terms. Simply put, outcomes are the so what of your organization. If you serve 300 ice cream cones, what change would you see in your world? Are the individuals more optimistic? Are they more likely to follow their diet the other days of the week? Bring your output to life. Be specific and be detailed as often as possible. Make sure you tell us how you're going to track and measure the impact of your project. When describing the project's impact, be clear about your timing. With this grant, what impact will you create within the grant period? Since you have up to 2 years to spend the money. Realistically, what accomplishments will you achieve? in 6 months, 12, 18, or 24. And it's okay if your program is going to come to an end at the end of the grant period. Perhaps the staff member you're bringing in is only being contracted for a 2-year term, or with a very specific job to do, or a renovation project is going to be completed within only 15 months. Be sure to explain how you will responsibly bring this project to an end. However, if the project is ongoing beyond the grant period, make sure you help our members understand the long-term impact of your program and your organization's capacity to deliver the program effectively. What does success look like? How will you be measuring how will you capture what success looks like? And finally, when we ask about sustainability, we're looking for the legacy of the project. What is the legacy of the project after completion of funding? Next slide, please. Be mindful to describe your organization and program as if the reader has never heard of you. Remember, the mix of women in your grant review committee will be different than last year. Proofreading of your application is really vital. Mistakes and typos distract and they remove the reader from your narrative right when they're in the middle of something. They might be distracted by going over some kind of a mistake that may have occurred. We're looking for well-written, clear, concise proposals. Not only should the person writing the grant take the time to proofread the document, but consider having multiple readers of the proposal. Those that have different roles in the organization, perhaps someone from outside the organization to ensure your message is being delivered as it was intended. Examples of additional readers could be a board member, perhaps an employee, maybe a volunteer, someone unaffiliated or outside the organization, or an internal team in the organization. Be sure to include people that will provide candid comments and constructive advice that will confirm, or if needed, improve your narrative. So we will communicate with you directly from the submittable software to ask you to submit any missing documents if they're needed. But please make sure to respond and complete submitting the additional information in advance of the June 1 deadline. To be fair to all the other groups, all documents have to be submitted by that deadline. Within the application process, be as transparent as you can with any possible contingencies that could be outstanding for your application at the time of submission, and explain how your organization intends to mitigate those. Our members will be unable to move forward if contingencies cannot be resolved by September 15th. Finally, please describe your organization's ability to sustain the project after the grant period ends. If the project itself is not sustained, perhaps your organization can describe the lasting effect of the project on the underserved and how the value of the project will live in the community. Now I'd like to introduce my amazing co-chair, Betsy McKnight. Betsy.
Hello, all. I'm Betsy McKnight. I'm the nonprofit coordinator co-chair. Many of you may know me from prior communications or conversations. I, along with Elizabeth, are your go-to for questions that you may have along the way. So in the beginning of August, all the nonprofits will hear whether or not they're continuing on in the process. Approximately 3 to 5 proposals per grant review committee will be selected for a site visit. And the site visit usually takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours max. And this year, they're definitely going to be in person. The grant community members are looking to hear firsthand about the impact that a grant could have. And the objectives of this are to meet key staff in person and board members. Key staff are those who are best prepared to speak to the proposal and answer questions. It's the committee's chance to conduct a due diligence review to resolve or clarify outstanding questions and to get more detailed information about the organization and your project. We want to gain a deeper understanding of the goals and the intended impact of your proposal. And then all people who get site visits are invited to get to submit their wish list, which is shared with the entire impact membership. and it's kept up on our website for the entire year. And it's a great opportunity to get donations, both monetary and in kind, as well as getting potential volunteers, and some organizations have even gotten new board members from the process. Next slide, please. So these are the four areas for a successful site visit. You want to make sure that you prepare. You want to bring your project to life. You can use the same outline. In fact, it's never too early to prepare what you want to say to the entire impact membership at the annual meeting as to why your proposal is so necessary for your constituents. The site visit committee is your first live audience that will enable you to gauge reactions to see what points you make resonate and what draw questions. And you want to focus especially on the ones that draw questions, because you want to answer those questions. Remember that this committee is asking questions that will be of interest to the entire membership. With your final presentation in November, if you have unanswered questions at that time to relevant topics, those can become doubts in the voters' minds. You want to focus on the project and not your overall operation at the site visit, since time is, will be concise. As we mentioned, you want to choose the speakers that are easily understood, articulate, dynamic, and who can really speak to the proposal. And then showing, if you want to do a brief tour of the facility, that absolutely, but we don't need to see every nook and cranny. We don't need to see your boiler room unless, of course, you're asking us for a new boiler. Next slide, please. So you've made it through the site visit and you are going to be a finalist. So to prepare for the annual meeting, you will receive a finalist liaison, which will be appointed, and they're your link to impact. They're your cheerleader. They're very helpful at this stage, and we encourage you to take their advice seriously, as they really know what impact members are interested in. We schedule rehearsals with the support of the Community Foundation of New Jersey, and typically an additional third party and our grants team, and they offer critical feedback and specific relevant recommendations to your presentation. You want to come to this rehearsal with your 5-minute speech as polished and as prepared as possible, and obviously with the speaker that's going to be given that proposal. It's really a rare opportunity to have people who are paid to give out grants critique your proposal in real time, or your presentation in real time. Finally, there's a finalist packet where you're asked to prepare a short document for our membership. And this serves as your connection to absentee voters. Not everyone can make it to the annual meeting, unfortunately, and they're able to vote absentee. So you really want to take this step seriously. The questions that we ask you to answer, you can take off your submitted application, and we suggest you make edits based on the feedback from your liaison and the questions that came up in your site visit. Next slide, please. So post-grant award oversight. We don't just hand you the money and run. It's our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the funds go to the proposed project that the members voted to support. So the finalists the grantees will complete a grant agreement, which outlines the key benchmarks and corresponding fund payment. Depending on the project timeline, we are very flexible if it makes sense. So if you can tell us why you need this money, you might have upfront costs, so you need a bigger chunk of it now, and then you need more money later. We're very reasonable and want to work with you. The outcomes of your proposal, we would love you to share. We ask you to share this information about your progress throughout the year at many different events that we may have. Don't worry, we won't call on you on any grantee too much, but it's a great opportunity to again get before civic-minded women in Monmouth County. Next slide, please. So funding is possible. for any project that meets the Impact 100 guidelines. You've taken the first proven step, which is to attend today. All of our prior grantees attended the information session. So congratulations, you're one step ahead. Don't be discouraged if you've applied before. Of the 18 prior grantees, 50% of our grantees applied 3 or more times before becoming a grantee. And if this is your first time applying, know that 4 of our grantees were awarded their project in the first try. So the process works for everyone. Our grantees' proposals have had a broad array of subjects, including addressing hunger, supporting healthcare, developing the arts, addressing the oceans, and supporting youth. And geographically, our grantees have come from, as you can see on the map, all different offices serving Monmouth County. Financially, our finalists span a wide range of revenues. Last year, we had finalists with revenue in the $500,000 range, we had some in the $1 million range, and one was over 10 million. So what is important to us is the project can be executed and that organizations can manage the $100,000 effectively. There's no magic formula of organizational size, location, or project type of focus. Your funding proposal remains a specific project that meets the funding priorities, has a high impact, and is articulated clearly. Next slide, please. So the benefits of the grant process, even if you're not selected as a finalist, the exposure is unique. You're exposed to many philanthropically minded women. And we've heard feedback that even if you're not selected, the process gives in-depth, unique insight into your organization and the programs to so many women who are willing to give time, talent, and treasure. It's really great exposure. These members become aware of your needs and the great work that's being done to address them. And it gives additional insight into the nonprofits and their programs. There's feedback built into the process, whether it's with the questions and comments at the site visit or during the rehearsal for the presentation. You get feedback which you may not get on a daily basis. And then members learn about your needs through the wish list and can get involved in a myriad of ways, which can be helpful. And the process helps to hone your goals, your outcomes, and mission, leaving you in a stronger position to go to other funders. Next slide, please. So the question, should you reapply? It's an unequivocal yes. The pool of applicants changes every year. So who you're up against changes. And so that gives you, a different opportunity. Not only that, but the review committee composition changes. Even if the criteria is consistent, who you're being compared up against changes every year.
We have a bit of technical difficulty. I'll jump in here for Betsy. So each year is a new opportunity. I'm sorry, go ahead, Betsy.
Yeah, sorry. As is the environment that we're living in and experiencing. So you absolutely want to reapply. Every year is a new opportunity and you can come back with more experience.
And you can come back with more experience and understanding of the process. That's why we've had applications in our grantee pool who have come back and been successful. So as Betsy said, yes, reapply.
So on this slide, you can see the variety of all types of organizations that have been awarded impact grants over the years. And we can't wait to see what organizations are going to be up here next year. And we hope it's yours. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Ann Ye, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much, ladies. I think, let me just make sure, Dawn, are you still on?
I am still here, yes.
Great. Hi, Dawn. Thank you so much. So at this time, Dawn Doherty is the Executive Director for the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide. They were a 2022 grant recipient. And so thank you so much for being here. I have a couple questions. I'm just going to start off the discussion, and I'm hoping more of our participants, if they have questions, can either put them in the chat or just use that raise hand feature in Zoom, and you can direct them to any one of us or to Dawn, and we'll be happy to answer them. So, Dawn, you had applied in the past for impact grants, correct?
That is correct. And so I just want to echo that, yes, reapply. We actually had applied annually since 2017 to Impact Jersey Coast. We are a statewide organization. So we also had applied to Impact 100 Garden State 5 times in the past. That one we have not been successful yet, but we are certainly going to continue.
Wonderful. And with those submissions, application submissions, do you change what your proposal is you're submitting, at least for us, and other impacts, or was it the same proposal you submitted every year, or did you kind of tweak it every year?
The proposal was, I believe the majority of the years we did definitely tweak, and a lot of that had to do with the community need and our proposed solution that we were seeking grant funding for.
So do you, as you reflected back, was there something different you did last year that you feel helped you be successful and receive our grant?
I don't know if I'd say different. I think, especially for anyone in, health and human services, it has been a very tough few years. So I think the environment shift post-COVID and the need for mental health might have aided our success in this year. I think as an organization, we also have grown substantially over the years. So our capacity, our ability to respond to the grant questions in a concise but comprehensive manner, I'm assuming also, helped.
I'm sure it did. What is your biggest piece of advice that you can give any of the nonprofit representatives on this call today?
So I'm actually going to, I hope you don't mind, give 2. One is really to that proofreading, just to speak a little bit more to that. Our process over the years has become more robust. Not only, do we have our team who puts together the application, we certainly have, internal and external folks. So we do have a board member review, at least one each year. Usually if we have an intern in the office, we will ask them to review because, as was said earlier, the women reviewing the applications may or may not be aware of your organization or the programs. And so language that comes very easily to, your staff and your team members may not make sense to, the reviewers. So really making sure that the language is very easy to understand and, the information is complete is hugely helpful. We have actually gotten into practice with the larger grants to read out loud, because sometimes when you have something in writing, it doesn't actually correlate the way you want to when it is spoken out loud. So that has also become part of our process that I believe has definitely helped. One other note, not for an Impact Jersey Coast grant, but if you are going to collaborate with a partner, make sure that that collaboration is confirmed completely up the chain. Because last year with an Impact 100 Garden State grant, we had been talking with a partner who was entirely on board. And then when it came time to, submit the application, we were just like, we want to make sure that if we do, receive the site visit or get the grant, that your, executive leadership are also supportive. And that's where we hit a snafu. And so unfortunately, we weren't able to submit that grant. So though for Garden State, we've submitted 5, we prepared 6. Because timing is also very, very important. So make sure you give yourself enough time, make sure you're complete with, all of the requirements, the paperwork, the, additional application needs that you need, but also just if you are going to partner, that MOU is really solidified prior to submission.
Thank you, Dawn. 2 excellent points. Those are all my questions for Dawn at the moment. Does anyone have anything specific for her? Otherwise, I'm going to go to the chat and I have one impact question, but if anyone has a specific question for Dawn. Let's see. Okay, so she's not going anywhere. So let me jump to the questions that we are getting. And then if you have a specific one for Dawn, we'll definitely get to that. So we have a question about the difference between a collaboration versus a partnership. So how we view a collaboration versus a partnership is where the grant funds are going to be shared. So partnerships are very valuable to the successful implementation of a lot of programs. We understand that. But if you are going to be giving any of the impact grant funds to another organization, we consider that a collaboration. If they are just providing you in-kind donations, I'll call them, if it's the space, if it's the participants, that would be a partnership to us. And so you would want to note that in your application, that you have strong partnerships in the community. But that is not, you won't have to do that extra collaboration step of making sure that organization is on board, splitting up the grant funds and things like that. Let's see, second, nonprofits providing housing repair services to an underserved population apply. Yes, if they only have a project budget, not specific projects. Absolutely. What you would do is in your project budget, let me just make sure budgets. Right. So they vary. You would want to outline materials. You would want to, I would hope that you would have some specific projects in the pipeline that you could share with our members that would give us an idea of the scope of the project. And so I would assume what you would want to do is for the project budget, talk about the materials and how many, you know, my own experience in house renovation is things vary greatly and depending on what the project is or where the location, right? In the bathroom versus the kitchen versus a door. So you just want to be very specific in your project budget. If you have more questions and you want to talk through it, we would happy to do it offline via email or come to our office hours.
And if I can add to that, I think it'd be helpful if you looked at maybe the previous year and you gave examples of this is how much we spent, this is the types, you know, this sort of aggregate information, I think, to make it real so that they understand. And then obviously talk about, you know, how life-changing those repairs are and what would happen to the people without them.
Okay, I'm trying, whoops, hold on a second. Can office hours details be found? Yes. Yes, they're online. This presentation will go out as well to all of you. And we will also be email blasting you with those dates and links to register. Let's see.
And we just want to clarify one more time the location and hours on this call, just in case that helps clarify it. I think it was one location, correct?
Absolutely. We're going to be doing it at one location. It's NJCU at Fort Monmouth. That's the New Jersey University that has a wonderful space. It's accessible. There will be definitely balloons or something that will alert us. And again, when you register, I will make sure that we are sending text messages to those participants with specific in case they move the rooms each time. Those dates, again, just so you can write them down in person, will be Tuesday, April 25th from 10 to 12 and Wednesday, May 24th from 3 to 5. So, and you do not have to come to just one, you could come to all of them. My hope is that, or the thought with the earlier dates was that we could work on some of the application questions or feedback. And then the May 24th, maybe I can't attach my project budget and we can help you with that. You also don't need to come in person. You can always send us an email and we'll help you attach a document to your application. We will send more Thank you to everyone for your time today. Thank you so much. Let me just, I'm going to make my screen bigger. So if anyone had raised their hand, I'm not missing anyone.
And there's one more question in the chat.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let's see. Office hours. Oh, you're trying to get your nonprofit organization started. I do have your tax ID number. Got it. So unfortunately, we need that 3 years of being in existence as a 5013C. I'm happy to take this offline if this would be a great area where you could collaborate with maybe a larger organization, because maybe you're seeing a need that another organization doesn't serve. And maybe we can help you create a collaboration with a larger organization so that you still can receive our grant funds. Wonderful. Okay, everyone. Well, I want to thank you everyone here again for attending. Thank you, Dawn, for your insight. Thank you to my entire team. I have such a wonderful group of ladies supporting myself, and we're so excited to kick off this grant cycle for 2023. I can't believe it's already here again. Thank you, everyone. And look at that, just under 1